All right, Jeremy, welcome to the Trail Chasers. How are things going?
Hey, thanks for having me. They're going really well. It's morning time where I am, and you're probably about to have your supper for the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing well. We're in Texas, Central Time Zone here in the U.S.
Amazing. If I say to you, if you had a business card with your name on it personally, what would it kind of say underneath your name?
Hey, well, I actually made up my title here at Hyperlyte, and I think you'll appreciate it. So it's co-founder, but it's also chief of Stoke, because
cool.
When you're a startup, you can do that. You can kind of call your shot. So I figured part of my role here is to help with marketing and go to market, and helping build the Stoke from nothing. And so somebody has to chief the Stoke, and so I went and chose the title Chief of Stoke.
I love that. That's actually that's very, very cool. And if you look back at kind of, I guess we can go through your personal journey, but also kind of the product journey. If you look at the kind of 5 most pivotal moments that have led you to becoming the chief of Stoke at Hyperlyte, and then maybe we can talk about the product as well.
Most pivotal moments.
5's a nice number, but you don't have to. I'm not gonna grade you.
Okay, so I should back up a little bit. Emery Atterbury he's our founder, and I'm kind of the follow along co-founder that he brought in about a year after he really started this thing. And so I would say the most pivotal moment is sort of my belief and friendship with Emery. So he's one of those guys, I'm sure you have some of those folks in your life where they say jump and you say how high, right?
Yeah.
And they do something and you just want to be a part of it because you believe in them, and that no matter what they put their mind to, they're going to figure it out and be successful. He's one of those. And so he could have told me he was starting a plumbing business, and I probably have been like, how can I support you, right? And so our friendship was 1. 2 was he created a product that genuinely solves a problem that I have had in my career as an endurance athlete. And it was kind of 2 things. One is nutrition, hydration had just been so complicated. I've been like juggling gels and salt pills and powders and Pop-Tarts. I don't know if they have those in South Africa, and it just kind of took away from the simplicity and the purity of running. I just wanted to be out in the trail enjoying scenery, and I found myself doing mental math the whole time. And so he came to me with this product idea where we just simplified nutrition, put everything in one powder, right? And allowed me to basically refocus on what I love doing, which was running. And nutrition, hydration just became a complement of what I love to do. And it also raised the bar in terms of carbs and sodium. Most people aren't taking enough sodium or enough carbs in these longer endurance efforts. And so we just put 100 grams of carbs, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and some supporting electrolytes in one product, which actually gave me what I needed to sustain long, think 24-hour type efforts. And so, the second pivotal moment was just the product that solved a real problem. Those are kind of the key 2. And then I think third, I have a background in sales and marketing, and I have a passion for helping founders take really cool things to market. And Emery is good at that stuff, but he's just not as interested in the marketing and sales side. He's a operations and product expert. He's also a great entrepreneur and business leader, but when it comes to sales and marketing, he just doesn't get as fired up as I do. And so the fit was really good for him to bring in some support on things he doesn't have as much experience in, but also just doesn't love as much, right? And so it works out great. He deals with our manufacturers. He deals with all the the nerd product stuff, and I deal with, helping build the athlete team, helping think about who our brand partners are going to be, some of our go-to-market bets. So it's a great fit of experience and passion for me to be involved. And so that's 3. I won't go through 5, but I gave you, I think, 3 of the big pivotal moments, like right place, right time, right person.
Yeah. And you mentioned his kind of background and your background, but where does the science come in?
So Emery, he is not a doctor or a scientist by title, but for all intents and purposes, he, I would say, is. I mean, he has been studying. He's one of those figure it out kind of guys. Like if he's curious about something, he will read 10 books, to learn as much as humanly possible about that topic. And he's done that for nutrition and hydration. We both come from a team sports background. So I played baseball in college. He played football in college. And I think his college football days really led him to be very curious about nutrition and hydration, and has studied it extensively since then. And when he got into ultra running and 6-7 years ago, I think he just looked at what was on the market and was like, somebody's got to solve this. It's too complicated. There's not enough in these products. He waited, and eventually nobody really solved it the way that he wanted to, and decided to, take a whack at it himself. And so, it more comes from just Emery's wiring and his curiosity over the last 10 plus years since he played college football.
How did the process happen, I guess, from the idea to some type of product and then, to the eventual actual product? How long did that take? And I guess also, where did you come in on that process?
Well, that's actually a funny question. And I kind of wish Emery was here to talk about this, but he actually didn't. He had the idea for like a year, and we're like best of friends. Keep in mind, we've trained 4 or 5 times a week together. We're talking all the time about running, about just literally life, everything. But he didn't tell me. He kept it a secret from me for a year. And so he started it really mid 2023 and was mixing powders that he ordered online in his basement, basically, and just kind of tweaking the formula. And then about a year after he had started it, he finally came to me and he's like, "Hey, Jeremy, I have been working on this thing for a year and I haven't told you." And he's like, "I didn't tell you because I know," he goes, "I know you, I know how you're wired." And he goes, when you hear about this, you're going to want to go all in on it and just throw tons of gas on this fire. And he's like, "I just wasn't ready for that, And so I was like, I get that. Semi-offended, but I get that. And so mid last year in 2024 is when he told me, and I was like, exactly what he said. I was like, dude, this is solves a massive problem. I think the market timing is perfect. I think 100 grams of carbs, 1,000 milligrams of sodium will market super well. Like, how can I support you? Because we got to do this. He was still mixing hand by hand and putting them in Ziploc bags for us to use on our runs. We did the Bear 100, which is in Utah here in the US, in September. And it worked really well for both of us, pretty much exclusively liquid calories. And right around that time, we're like getting ready to launch. I was like, we got to build an athlete team, because team building is like one of the things I'm most passionate about. And if you've seen the documentary that we did on Hans had been like on our radar for 6 months since he came to Texas and just absolutely crushed at Bandera. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. He has struggled with his nutrition and his hydration. We're about to launch this. He's under the radar, so we might be able to land him because he probably doesn't have a lot of sponsors yet. And so that's where I reached out to Hans and been like, "Hey, man, we're looking for sort of our face of the brand, if you will, our first sponsored athlete." And, he decided to give it a go. We sent him a bunch of hand mixed bags and these little Ziplocs, and obviously took a big risk on us because we didn't have a website or social media or anything. We hadn't officially launched, and he's like, "Man, this is really helping, I want to partner with you guys. And I think I'm in the right place, right time. Call it luck, call it divine appointment. Like, it was a really cool partnership. And, that was sort of the launch of the brand was once behind sign. We decided to use that and really launched the brand in October of last year. And there's been all sorts of fun things that have happened since. It's grown faster than either of us thought. We feel really, blessed and thankful, that we are where we are 9 months in. But also some learning that curves and learning opportunities along the way.
And, I guess it's you're kind of trying to break into kind of two big markets. One is the kind of nutrition and the other is the trail running kind of space. How did you kind of approach that, especially going up against big players and kind of more traditionally established kind of brands?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we wanted to play to our strengths because as a small brand, you do not have the financial resources to compete against the conglomerates or the folks that have been in the space for 20 years. So we can't go throw $5 million in ads into the cycling industry. That doesn't play to our strengths. So what we had to ask ourselves is like, what are we uniquely positioned to excel in? And we knew that the trail running space was one that we were very passionate about. B was authentically us because we are trail runners ourselves, right? And then C, like, we were fairly well connected in the trail running space, and so if there was any space that made sense for us to really build relationships with and focus on serving, it was trail running. And so over the last 9 months, it's been really focused on pretty much ultra trail running in the US, and that has doing that well, I think, has started to get the attention of some kind of adjacent segments. So, trail running outside of the US, I'd say, and then cycling, triathlons, road running. We were even hyper focused on direct to consumer, and we've had some inbound interest on, retail and, wholesale. And so it's been really, I think, the right decision to hyper focus on trail. And from here, we have to ask ourselves, okay, like, yes, we can serve more people outside of trail. I think any endurance athlete can benefit from Hyperlyte, but how do we do that in a way that maintains like our authenticity, right? We don't want to sell out, right? But at the same time, like, we know we can help other athletes who aren't trail runners. And so we have to be really, really mindful when we're expanding outside of trail that we're doing so in a way that is authentically us, right? And doesn't do it for the wrong reasons. You see a lot of brands that start in one segment and then they get a taste of success and then they're like, hey, let's just go to international, let's go to retail, let's go to cycling, let's go to triathlons. Or I think yes, we can help there, but the question is like, how can we do that in a way that doesn't lose our ethos, our values, and who we authentically are. One of the things that we recognize as trail runners ourselves is that it never really felt like any of the brands that trail runners were using reflected how we feel when we're out on the trail. And it's no dig at these brands, but I don't know about you, but when I'm out on the trail and it's muddy and it's messy and it's grungy and it's gritty, I don't feel like bright colors. I don't really feel like a very scientific type vibe Like I feel pretty much like grunge rock and sort of this edgy vibe. And so it was really important to us when we created the brand. And I can't take any credit for the branding. This is Emery and Chris, who does a lot of our branding and our social and our photography. We wanted to make sure that it felt like what we feel like when we're out on the trails. And I think that was one of the best things that we have done, was created this sort of edgy punk rock type vibe that trail runners see and they're like, that feels like trail. And these people get it. And if I feel like they get it, I'm gonna be willing to give them a shot. Right. And that's really what we need, is we need somebody to say, hey, I'm willing to give these guys a shot, because I think, and I'm biased, but I do think the product sort of sells itself once somebody gives it a shot and they're able to see the results that they get from it. And so for us, man, branding was massive, and none of this bright colors, none of this like super scientific vibe. No, it needs to be like grungy. It needs to feel like what we feel like when we're on the trails. The other thing is, I'm big on this idea of do things that don't scale, which you always hear people in startups saying, like, does it scale? And if it doesn't scale, don't do it. But I actually think quite the opposite. And what I mean by that is, how can we go that extra mile and take the extra time to make sure our customers genuinely feel heard, seen, appreciated, and that we care? And so it's things like, hey, let's write a handwritten note every time somebody orders. It's things like, hey, let's message people that follow us on Instagram and tell them thank you, right? And let's take the time, and it takes a couple hours a day to personally message people who are messaging us on Instagram and make sure we're engaging with folks. It's things like going to the races that we sponsor, right? We sponsor a lot of races, and we actually want to show up and be there to show that, hey, we care about this community, and answer the questions that we get about our product from runners like us. And so it is, yeah, it's branding, but it's also like, how can we just go above and beyond and show fellow runners that like we genuinely care? We're just like you, trying to solve a problem that we had as runners. And I know that has gone a long way. That's the feedback that we get, is like, hey, these guys actually get it. And
that's such an interesting approach. And where did you kind of pick that up? And, where have you kind of learned that from?
I study startup. I have been in the startup world for several years. There's a old essay by a guy named Paul Graham, who started Y Combinator, called Do Things That Don't Scale. And he literally is telling stories of like how Airbnb got off the ground. The founders of Airbnb were going door to door in New York City to try to find their first, however many homes that they can list on the platform. And so I'm like, if the founders of Airbnb can go door to door to get some momentum on this multi-billion-dollar business, then a couple of us trail runner vagabonds in Texas can take the extra time to, show up for people. And so I'm a big believer in like treating B2C like it's B2B, for at least for a while. Like we obviously can't do some of these things forever, but for as long as we can take that extra time to make sure our, like, especially our early customers feel like they mean something, like that they're super, super important to us. Right. And I think there's this idea of like 1,000 true fans. It's another book that's pretty popular in startup. And so like, if we can create 1,000 true fans that no matter what we put out, they will engage with or they'll buy, like, I think that is the foundation of a super like healthy business. So yeah, as long as we're in it for the right reasons, like we genuinely, like, we get messages from folks that say, hey, you saved my race, or I wouldn't have been able to like accomplish this goal if it wasn't for you guys. Like, that gives us so much life, gives us so much joy, and like fuels our fire. So like, we want to show up every day for that person that couldn't hit their goals if they didn't have proper nutrition, hydration, or like Hans, we're in the hospital because with rhabdo, because they weren't properly eating and drinking. And so, yeah, just trying to do things for the right reasons. And that definitely continues to fuel our fire.
Yeah. And, why do you kind of think that this problem that you're trying to solve, why do you think it hasn't been, solved yet? You did mention that whole thing of Emery was waiting for it to be solved and it never was. Why do you think it's kind of been ignored?
I don't actually have a good answer for that. I think one of the things that we did that was really simple, and I'm sure other brands eventually will probably emulate this, was just the math was is really simple. So it's it's 1,000 milligrams of sodium and 100 grams of carbs, which makes it super easy. If you want to do 50 grams of carbs, you know exactly how many milligrams of sodium you're going to have, right? Which is 500. Nobody's ever done, like, to my knowledge, math that simple. So it makes it really easy to like go up and to go down. Most brands are going to be like, hey, we'll do 60 grams of carbs and then 460 milligrams of sodium. And so then you're having to, do mental math on the fly. So other brands have done sodium and carbs, in one mix. I just don't think anybody's done it to where the math just makes it super, super simple. And I think perhaps they think that just carbs, no sodium, allows for maybe some flexibility or more of like a modular system. Maybe for some people that's desirable, but for us, it's like, let's just simplify it. Like, running's supposed to be pure, it's supposed to be simple. Like, let's reflect that in the product. So I actually don't have a good answer for that, and I'm sure other brands will copy and catch on at, typically what happens when some momentum is gained. But yeah, thankful to be able to solve it the way that we have.
Yeah. And, you did mention a little bit about that in-person kind of thing. How important is, getting to the races and actually getting the product into the customer's kind of hands and testing and things like that in the kind of nutrition space?
I think it's really important for two key reasons. So one is, I would say, the market loves to know that founders are in it for the right reasons and that they care. And so when we show up to those races, they're able to see, how much this means to us. And I think it communicates to folks that we're willing to sacrifice our weekend or family time or whatever it might be to be there, supporting them, cheering them on, and meeting them. And so that's one. Two is, when we're at the races and communicating with folks that are using the product, we're able to get tons of feedback. So it tightens the feedback loop for us on the product or anything about the brand that we can quickly implement, that if we weren't out in the field and we weren't meeting our customers and hearing what they're saying about the product, we would probably be much slower to hear this feedback or not hear it at all, and therefore perhaps won't be innovating or iterating as quickly as we can. So those are like the two key reasons. I think being at races and meeting as many customers as possible, I think is really valuable especially for a young brand.
And you obviously have the one kind of product, and you did mention that whole thing about creating things that don't scale. So where does that kind of leave you in terms of developing new products and things like that? Because it's like, you can't develop double the product because you can just have 2 scoops or 4 scoops. So where does that kind of leave you, and what's the kind of plan around that?
Great question. Yeah, so a couple really exciting things that we have coming down the pipeline, and this is a result of what I just said, which was, hey, I love this product, but have you guys considered this, or have you considered that? And so a couple things that we have coming down the pipeline is, one will be a caffeinated version of our mix, and we'll keep the numbers super simple. So, 100 grams of carbs, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and then likely 100 milligrams of caffeine. That's the feedback that we've gotten from our elite runners, as well as just several of our customers. And then also we have a first of its kind gel coming down the pipeline. And I won't share too many details on that one yet, but that's been 6 months in the making, testing, iterating with our elite athletes, and we're really excited to bring something to the market that I don't think anybody has done before. And so both of those you'll see, I think, in the the next couple of months. And then also too, just like it's been pretty cool, just what I talked about earlier from a branding standpoint. I think people have really connected with just like the vibe, the look and the feel. So we want to create more swag and tech shirts and hats and soft flasks and just accessories that help people feel connected to the brand and give them really, really high quality gear when they're out in the trails. Those are some of the things, man. We're always dreaming and scheming, and we're totally open to feedback. And so I mean this, like, we really would love to hear from anybody, like on Instagram, shoot us a message. We reply to everybody, and we take any and all suggestions, positive feedback, or even constructive feedback really, really seriously.
Yeah. And you did mention earlier about that kind of adjacent sports and things like that and international expansion. So where, I guess, from South Africa's point of view, where does that in the along the line?
Good news, man. Such good news. So we are going to, and I can't name the brand, but everybody will know it. We're going to be launching in about 2 weeks. So, but maybe by the time this is released on a distribution partner platform that will allow for international shipping, South Africa included. So in about 2 weeks, you and a lot of your listeners will be able to get their rocket fuel. So I'm really excited about that. Since the Hans documentary, we've been able to gain quite a bit of followers and folks just from outside of the US, and a lot of people have asked, hey, when can we get our hands on this? And so it's coming very soon.
And what does that kind of then mean for your kind of principles around in product, and like is that then what you're going to have to look at, or how's that kind of going to affect that kind of loop when you've got people all over the world kind of using the product?
I obviously makes it harder for us to travel and see people and meet people in person. I do think we're going to be at UTMB next year. We'll have several athletes there this year, but we'll have even more athletes there next year. So I'm hoping to meet a fair bit of our international friends next year at UTMB. But the nice thing, man, in 2025 is we are one Instagram message away, or even a video call away. And so, like I said, highly encourage and welcome folks to message us and ask any questions, share any feedback. We're even open to jumping on calls. We want to build relationships internationally as much as the same way as we can, as we have in the US. And so please reach out, even if you haven't been able to use the product.
And what has the reaction been across the board in terms of from customers, but then also from racers, from like you mentioned UTMB, if you're going to them with this kind of proposal or this product and you're like, hey, we want to come and be there, what is the kind of reaction, especially big races that have obviously already got kind of nutrition sponsors?
Very positive. I was surprised. A lot of race directors have told us, like, this is not common. Brands and actually not just race directors, but also athletes. They're like, brands, even shoe brands don't show up to these races. Shoe brands that sponsor our race, they're like, I am very, like, they're surprised to see us out there. They're excited. They love it, but it's not normal. And I get it. Like, at some point, if you're sponsoring 300 races across the US, like, you can only go to a couple, but they're refreshed, I would say. I think, but they're also surprised that we're out there. It is a bit of a sacrifice, but like, to us also, we love it. Like, to be at Western States or Hard Rock. We would do it even if we didn't have Hyperlyte, because it's just a passion of ours. Emery and I were out at Hard Rock last year before Hyperlyte launched, and it just brings us a ton of joy and gives us a lot of life, and it inspires us. Like, we're on the Hard Rock and Western States journey ourselves. And so it's authentic, and we kind of, bring the brand along for the ride. I guess that's one way to think about it.
And, we did mention a little bit about the kind of the athlete team, and Yeah, I guess that's quite a unique approach to kind of start there. And it was actually quite interesting because I don't know if you've watched Shawk O'Neal's documentary on Netflix, where he's like relaunching Reebok. And it was like that was his same thing, was like, we have to get like athletes. That's the first thing we have to do. So this was like the second time that I've kind of heard that. And it's quite an interesting strategy. So yeah, how did that come about?
Man, that's cool. I got to check that out. I haven't seen that. Yeah. So I guess I thought about some of our go to market from the perspective of me 5 years ago, just getting into the sport, and what inspired me and moved me to run certain races or try certain products, or follow certain brands. And there was a couple things. One was content, like, actually I should say storytelling is probably a better way to put it. And I frankly don't know if I'd be a 100 miler right now as a runner if it weren't for some of like Billy Yang's documentaries. And so I knew early, I'm like, we have to tell good stories, because I, as a runner, have been massively impacted by good storytelling. Actually, my first 100 miler was the Rim to River 100 in West Virginia. And I found out about that race from a documentary on YouTube I think it's called Into the Well, right? And so I knew, okay, as an early runner, I was really compelled and moved by storytelling. So I want that to be a key part of our strategy. And so the other one was like, I was also really kind of looking at, hey, what are the top athletes in our sport? Like, what are they doing? Right? What are they promoting? And if it's good enough for Jim, it's probably good enough for me, And so I know I kind of wanted to combine both of those, storytelling with tying our brand to athletes. And that was sort of what I thought would be a great catalyst for us getting off the ground. But the challenge for us was we couldn't afford, the Jims and the Courtneys of the world. Also, they probably weren't going to give us the time of day because we were nobody. And so we knew we had to bet on underdog athletes who had massive upside and were on this trajectory to where they were going to be a top name in the sport, but they weren't quite yet. And so we could catch them, when they're under the radar. We went out and sort of built this team of like underdogs who didn't have nutrition sponsors, but we believed in them. We believed they were in it for the right reasons. They were going to be in the sport for a while. They're going to reflect our values. And also too, we're an underdog brand, and so it's like we want to make sure Emery and I have also been underdogs in our lives, and so we have a passion for supporting other underdogs. And so it's just natural for us to go find this like motley crew of up and comers, and Hans being the first, and wanted to combine the fact that like he was an up and comer with that storytelling component. And we knew even before we signed him, if we could sign him, we need to film a documentary on him, because he's about to, I think, have a breakout moment, and he's about to be a top of the sport. But he also has this like crazy story over the last couple of years that nobody knows about, right? So let's go document that story, and then let's just like kind of see how it crescendos. And it ended up crescendoing at Canyons this last year. We thought it would be at Black Canyon. He got sick, but that Canyons was just like a beautiful ending to that documentary. And so, long answer, but when we thought about our go to market, we thought about, hey, as early runners, like what impacted us, and we kind of infused, like we built the strategy based on those things, storytelling, and then like building an athlete team, especially up and comer underdogs.
Yeah. And, in terms of the documentary, I mean, it obviously wasn't a cheap exercise, So what was obviously it was quite a bit of risk there, but what made you believe that it could, it really could be successful?
That's a good question. It was a risk. And I was like, and this is kind of how I'm wired. It's probably why Emery didn't share Hyperlyte with me until a year in, but I knew it. I was just like, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, this story, I know what has happened. And with Hans over the last year, even if nothing happens from here forward, this story is 10 out of 10. So we got to go document the story of Hans and what makes this guy tick and how he's come onto the scene, even if nothing else happens. But I'm like, also, I know he's about to do something special. Like, I know he's about to go get a golden ticket at Black Canyon, or he's, going to go win like top 10 at Western. I was just like, in my heart of hearts, I had this deep sense of conviction that he's about to do something special, which would make a unbelievable ending to a, documentary type story. And so we actually got some funding for the documentary, which took some of the financial risk, of course, off, and we're super thankful for it. We did invest some money, of course, into especially some of the marketing and the distribution of the documentary. But yeah, we just were like so dead set on it that we were like, no matter what happens, whether it's winning Black Canyon or going back to the hospital or him, I guess, going back to canyons, like we're gonna make it happen, because we believe there's a story worth telling here. And it was so special, man. Hans is the real deal. To be able to spend time with him and just see that whole thing unfold the way it did. We scripted it with him winning Black Canyon or getting a golden ticket at Black Canyon, but it actually, like, the actual story ended up being better than scripted, because that like created this like big sort of curveball moment in the storyline that nobody saw coming. We didn't.
Yeah. And how's the reaction been?
Oh, man, really, really encouraging. So none of us are YouTube experts, but YouTube has a specific algorithm for those of you who are aware. And we apparently were blessed by the YouTube algorithm, because we had like 50 subscribers. We had released one video on our channel a few weeks earlier, I believe, that had just like maybe 100 views. And so we're like, oh, this might get 1,000 views, because we don't have an existing channel. So we released it on YouTube, and we had Ultra helped us promote it a little bit on Instagram, and we did a couple premieres, one here in McKinney, Texas, and one in Noonan, Georgia, where Hans is from. So we did our best to kind of build the Stoke, but we ultimately were like, oh, we're just releasing it on YouTube and leaving it up to the YouTube algorithm. And man, it's been really cool. In, I want to say, 3 weeks has reached 600 views. I know, we had no idea, man. No idea. And it's all been just through, I guess, the algorithm feeding. And then I think they pay attention to how long people watch it. And it's just been really positive. We've gotten tons and tons of people who have reached out and said, like, I hadn't been running for X amount of years. This inspired me to get off the couch and run again. I mean, one guy reached out and said, hey, I was like in a super dark place mentally, and this pulled me out of like a pit. And I just want to say thank you. Like, if we did the documentary just for that one person, man, like, it would have been worth it above and beyond. And my philosophy is, for every one person saying something, there's 10 people that are thinking it that aren't saying it. And so it's been really encouraging. And it's also just been like a big catalyst for the brand. I mean, a lot of people who have watched it had never heard of us, because we're new. And I think it's been, hopefully a refreshing way to introduce them to Hyperlyte and kind of what we're about and some of our values. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more encouraged by the reception that we've had. And honestly, too, for me, like, the thing that maybe brings me the most joy with this whole project was what it has done for Hans. Before and even if it wasn't for the documentary, this eventually would have happened. I think this helped catalyze it. But, he had a couple thousand followers, and I think has basically 10x that, right? And I think it created a lot of fans of Hans who, some of them weren't even runners or even into running, but now they're following Western states because they're just really compelled and connected to this, 25-year-old runner's story. And so it's been cool to see how it's created a lot of, believers and fans, and Hans, rightfully so. The guy's incredible, and he's got a great heart, and he has a really exciting future, not only in this sport, but just in his life.
Yeah. And speaking of future, we did chat a bit about it, but what does the future look like? Like short term, long term, medium term. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. There's like two answers to it. What I said earlier, where it's like, hey, in the next 6 months, we're going to release these products, X amount of time, we're going to focus more, probably, we're going to start to focus on retail as well. Right. And, like there's like the practical answer to that, but then there's like probably more of like the ethereal answer, which is we kind of have this philosophy that like, if we just show up every day and do the right things for the right reasons, then things sort of take care of themselves. Like the score takes care of itself. And I feel like it evolves the way that it's supposed to. And so we're very passionate about operating from our values, and so far that has led us to grow faster than we would have ever thought, which we're super grateful for. But also has just led us to opportunities that we would never have dreamed of, that have just, I think, happened as a result of focusing on each and every day and doing the next right. And so I could tell you, like, in 2 years it's going to be this, in 3 years it's going to be that. But like, honestly, 9 months ago, we thought like where we are today would be 3 years from now. So it's like, it's hard to tell you, because it ebbs and it flows and it evolves, the way that it does. And so I'm along for the adventure. You and I are adventure junkies. And so part of me enjoys the fact that, we thought it was going to be one thing and it's another, right? You don't know what's around that next bend, but that's sort of like what drives us and what gets us out of bed in the morning. Is just like every day is a new adventure, and who knows where it's going to lead.
Incredible. Thank you so much for making the time, and super excited to finally be able to order the product and try it out.
Thanks, Dean. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and excited to see how your story and your podcast evolves. And if you give it a shot, or if any of your folks give it a shot, just let us know what you loved, and if you didn't love it, let us know too. And we'd love to meet you and engage with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Awesome.